everybody. Before this episode, I just wanted to thank one of our sponsors, Partners Dental Studio. They're your lab in all things ortho and airway, rooted in 5 main promises: quality, innovation, consistency, dependability, communication, and to ensure your practice thrives. Partners is dedicated to delivering excellence through quality, craftsmanship, and advanced techniques, ensuring every appliance meets the highest standards of precision and durability. Together, we create lasting smiles that impact lives. Give them a try. And back to the podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the ASAP Pathway Podcast. I'm your host today, Dr. Stacy, and Dr. Tracey is joining us today, too, with our awesome guest, Dr. Jeremy Manuele. And oh my gosh, did I say it right, Jeremy?
You said it perfect. Yeah, I'm so impressed.
we were practicing it, and then I just got nervous. You have such an awesome history here, a really rich history. For those of you who do not know Dr. J, which is what he sometimes goes by, I would like to introduce just a little micro spec of his bio here, just to condense it. Dr. J is a Las Vegas-based orthodontist, graduating from UNLV's dental school and completing his residency at LSU in New Orleans. Following residency, he returned to Las Vegas with his wife, Nicole, and their 4 children. Oh my gosh, you had 4 kids during residency and dental school?
Yeah, some of them before and then, one of them after, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, sorry, I just had to pause and give you props for that. Practicing alongside Dr. R, and to Nicole, let's get real. Props to
For
Nicole.
real.
Practicing alongside Dr. R. Cree Hamilton and teaching part-time at UNLV's School of Dental Medicine. His commitment to service runs deep, with over 2 decades in the Army National Guard, including a deployment to Ramadi, Iraq. Did I say it right? Ramadi?
I think so. That's how we said it.
Okay. Oh, I didn't want to say that one wrong. In his commitment to the orthodontic profession, Dr. J recently created the MARPE-360 online course, a comprehensive continuing education course for dental practitioners focused on understanding airway health and non-surgical adult and teen skeletal expansion. Driven by a genuine passion for teaching, his focus continues to be on the professional growth of the orthodontic community as a whole. He also runs the Vegas Orthodoc YouTube channel dedicated to helping people identify and understand the needs for early dental facial orthopedic intervention in kids, and also to support orthodontic practitioners with newer technologies in the ever-changing, tech-heavy, modern orthodontic landscape. And isn't that the truth? Wow. Welcome. So nice to have you.
An honor to be here. Appreciate all that you guys are doing. I mean, it's been, I was introduced to you guys really only a few years ago. And when I looked into what it was that you guys were doing to make a difference and spread education and really help people collaborate, like it was super impressive to me. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. And for those of you, the online course that he has, which we'll go into a little bit more, we'll have all these links and information in the podcast as well. But I wanted to dive in. It seems like the theme lately when I'm doing these podcasts and I just try to go with it organically, it's like everything happens for a reason. And I think the theme the last few episodes have been collaboration and building teams and raising awareness. And I will have to say this, when we started ASAP Pathway, which is, we were all just saying a few minutes ago, golly, it was like 4 something years ago, there weren't that many orthos. There were orthodontists, trust me, all doing this, but it seemed like we had definitely a more heavy general practitioner membership. And then lately it's like, wow, something's changing, something's happening, and we're seeing more orthodontics looking into early intervention orthopedics. Why do you think that is? We're getting more orthodontic members such as yourself. Like, why? What are you seeing? What is changing in the orthodontic world?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is that, orthodontists in general, like, and not that, other specialties or practices aren't, but we're super duper like critical of everything new that comes out, right? I mean, it's always like, a little bit, resistant to change, all those things. And so when we see something at a lecture or, or at a conference, or you hear something on a podcast, I mean, our first thing is like, just critical, like what's wrong with what they're saying,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
there was a long, yeah, there was a long time when I would attend meetings, and, I still attend meetings, honestly, the same way. Like, I'm always thinking like, is what's happening or what you're telling me is happening, is that really happening? And for me, I think one of the big differences was cone beam imaging. And so, for years we would have people saying X, Y, or Z is happening, but then they'd show you a profile photo before and after. And like, you really don't know what happened based off of, the imaging you were being shown. And so, I still have a healthy amount of skepticism when it comes to, taking in new information. But when you had a number of orthodontists start, showing and demonstrating what's happening, these changes in 3D, and then you're pairing that with, some of the more subjective data with what the patient is experiencing, and then it becomes undeniable, because when you only have a subset of tools in your toolbox that allow you to make certain changes, and then all of a sudden you're seeing these cases where it's like, wow, I couldn't do that with the tools that I have. And so it's like, well, let me look into that and see what's going on there. And then, after a while, you start to learn, right? You take one course, you learn this, you take another, you learn that, you start talking to other people in your community that know different things or have different specialties. And for me, I mean, it all happened kind of organically. It started with one Airway course. I think the Spear, Jeff Rouse Airway
Yeah.
prosthodontics
Airway
was,
pros.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, the big leap for me. I'm like, wow, there's so much out here. And that just sort of sparked the interest. And I probably absorbed 10% of the material that he presents. I mean, it's so in depth, but he gives you a lot of resources, so you can, you have something to go off of. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I'm having new conversations. I'm having conversations with physicians I didn't used to have. I'm having conversations with referring dentists I didn't used to have. And so, after that, you sort of just, the more conversations you have, the more you attract people that are, aware and interested in the same types of things. And for me, it didn't happen overnight, but definitely it was a process that organically kind of took place as I became more and more educated on what's going on with sleep disorder breathing, and how that relates to, in my world, specifically anatomy, right? That's the portion
Yep.
of the sleep disorder breathing that we get involved in helping with. So, yeah.
I
Jeremy,
oh
so
no, go
Spear,
ahead.
so you mentioned Spear Education. So, that's a huge restorative education platform. So were you invited by a GP? Like,
Yeah,
how did
so
you
we've been a part of multiple study clubs that they've had. And so over the years, yeah, interdisciplinary cases and whatnot. And so that's how we kind of had our membership with them.
That's
That's
literally
great
what I was
because
going to ask him
yeah,
too, is why did he pick that course? Because that's interesting. What was the mindset that you said, I'm going to take that course? Like,
yeah. So, I thought you brought up really a couple interesting points. Like the first one being that, orthodontists are very critical, and I've been a huge advocate for interdisciplinary team, especially for GPs that are starting off. How can we communicate with the orthodontist for help? So like what was it that you said, okay, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to do this with my GPs. What was it that made you say yes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it was something I believed in. So it was like, I didn't know what they knew or didn't know, or what their thoughts were. I was just communicating, hey, like, this is how I'm looking at these cases. You know what I mean? This is what I'm seeing, and this is why I recommend what I recommend. And so that was really the start of the conversations that we had. And I've had some, they're like, oh my gosh, like, I had no idea that, that's how you thought about cases, or that you even knew anything about this stuff. And then others just like, what? Like, where do I learn more about that? And so, these conversations that we have just in our normal day-to-day, working with patients, interchanging patients, that's, I feel like, what sparks a lot of growth, not only in the areas of airway and sleep disorder breathing, but also in any, new advance in dentistry, right? I mean, I've
Mhm.
learned so much about general dentistry after leaving orthodontic residency and dental school, just because of the conversations that I have with practitioners that I work with, and they're telling me about the new things that they're doing. So I think that that's definitely a spark for getting more information out there. I think the other great thing is having good information more portable. And that's, the number one reason why I did this course, is like, when I tried to gather information on, well, how am I going to do this expansion? I'd seen some Facebook posts and some other people posting cases. I'm like, wow, how do I learn how to do this? It's a challenging landscape to try and get quality information on. At least it was at the time. And, even at the time I launched the course a year ago, it was just difficult to find. And so that was the
Yeah.
real stimulus. I'm like, somebody's got to like take this information and make it portable enough so that other people can access it without having to fly halfway across the country or the world. And so that was really, I think the more quality information we have like that, everything that you guys are doing with the online modules, setting it up to where people can have resources and navigate through is going to be a huge stimulus for getting quality information out in a way that's digestible in our modern world. We just don't have the time resources available to seek out every single thing in physical locations that we may want, need, or be interested in. And so I think that platform is amazing for being able to share information in a more economical and efficient and way.
I think too, I agree 100%, which is like, if you can even be at home in your pajamas, a cup of coffee on the weekends, and you're getting as much online education as you can to almost prepare you for that live course, like get your mind prepared so you're not so you're maximizing any online course that you are attending. And they are all additive. And we tell our members, they're like, what courses should we take?
Yeah.
Take them all. I mean, you can't know too much. Here's where the problem becomes is when this is what we did. Course. I'm sure you did too, Jeremy. How do I put it all together? Because then you start to have analysis paralysis. Well, wait a minute. What do I use? What technique should I use? What's best for this patient? And that's why we felt too, it was important to really dive into the why. What are your goals? What is the treatment outcome that you're desiring? What is the diagnosis for this patient? Now go into your tool belt and start using all the education that you have. But I love that it's online. I like to have coffee and just sit around and listen. And even in the car, I drive before work and kind of soak up stuff on my way to work or in between patients. Something you said too, that was interesting. That is what Katie Bullwinkle, she's an orthodontist that is working amazingly with Melissa Swanson. They both were in the same community. Both had more unique Airway comprehensive approaches. They're very comprehensive, and they didn't even know that each other existed. They knew of each other, but they didn't know that each other, how do I say this? They didn't know that they had more similar mindset and practice philosophies. They just didn't know that they shared that. And like you said, it's not until you start having those conversations with your general practitioners start telling your orthodontists kind of what you're thinking. So their letters started becoming more rich with content as to like when they're referring, these are the things I'm looking for. These are the things I'm concerned about. So when you refer to an orthodontist, because I guess you have to walk this line, right, Jeremy? Like, not all of the people that refer to you maybe they're not open to or are looking for the same things you're looking for comprehensively, TMJ, Airway. Is that fair to say that maybe you have some
100%.
general dentists that don't look for those things, but you're finding it? So then how do you communicate with them to maybe start looking for these things because you're looking for those things and it's part of your treatment plan?
Yeah, like in the beginning, I used mostly traditional methods, right? You'd have letters that go out and then occasionally a phone call. But with me, it's like, with the technology and what we have and the imaging, I mean, some docs aren't even familiar as with cone beam and whatnot. They have never even like looked through a cone beam in detail. And so what I started doing is just, for these cases where I knew there was things that were a little less traditional, right, that we needed to talk about or discuss about, I would just start creating videos and just, send them a video, password protected, so that they could log in on their own time. They could see the imaging. They could hear me talking about it. I could walk them through like what I'm seeing and why, if there's literature references I wanted to send, I could send that with it. And so, that was my approach, basically being able to almost have an in-person consult with them, even though we weren't in person. And again, 15, 20 years ago, we couldn't really do that. And so it's a nice, technology has helped us to help each other in that way. I mean, this conversation we're having right now wouldn't have been possible then. And so, that for me is, the communication and not only just, talking to one another, but being able to show and describe things, through technology with each other. is to me a huge driver of all things technology, of all things advances in dentistry. You know, and Airway's certainly one of them.
That's so true too. The technology's changing, which could be why we are seeing, again, orthodontists. Let me just tip my hat to you guys. Sometimes in this arena and the environment, there's some how am I trying to say here? Divisive philosophies, if you will, on whether orthopedic early intervention makes a difference. So there are different camps. But here's what I really love about the orthodontist. They do come in with a critical eye. You guys are amazing with, golly, the growth and development, what you guys understand and what you're taught in the residency. You cannot deny that is something that is expansive that we don't have within dental school. None of us had that, not to the degree you get it in ortho. So for like Tracey, Michelle, and I, we had to do all that growth and development training after on our own to figure out, you know, what are our capabilities? What is outside the scope of expansion? Can you even accomplish what we're wanting to accomplish in a 7-year-old, in a 12-year-old, in an 18-year-old? What are your limitations? But I think with the technology, you are now seeing orthodontists going, okay, we've been maybe hypercritical of some of these things that have been happening for decades. There are general dentists that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, early orthodontic intervention, and saying and screaming, we are seeing children sleeping better. We are seeing children breathing better. They didn't necessarily even know what they were doing because we didn't have the technology. They didn't understand the depth of what they were accomplishing. But now that we have cone beam technology, we can say, well, it makes sense. Look at the anatomical changes you were making when you were doing this expansion, when there wasn't a crossbite there, general dentist 20 years ago, that you didn't know what you were doing necessarily. You just knew that when you did this, you had beautiful faces, you had a beautiful profile, and you had children that had quality of life changes. Have you also seen those quality of life changes? I mean, like, I'm sure you have. What is making you say, yes, it's worth treating these children early? It's worth jumping in when there's not a crossbite. What is happening in your practice, Jeremy, that you're like, wake up, everybody, we got to start seeing these kids?
Sure. Yeah, back to what you were saying before. I mean, when we talked about general dentists doing this 20 years ago, I mean, orthodontists were too. I mean, you think about like McNamara and whatnot.
Yeah,
I mean, like
McNamara.
this has been preached from multiple camps over the years. But to me, the difference is, now like there's a jump between, the anatomy and just saying, okay, well, I want to correct the anatomy, and tying that anatomy correction back to sleep disorder, breathing, or other problems that they're having. And rightly so, our profession in general has been very critical of, what those links are. And, in my opinion, the more, now that we have, 3D volumetric data, now that people are getting, before and after nasal rhinometry and sleep questionnaires, like the data is being conglomerated in a way that it never has been able to before. So, I mean, most practicing orthodontists are working off of, 30, 40, 50, 100 years of two-dimensional imaging and analysis and research that's come from that.
Yeah.
And so, like McNamara was kind of one of the big names in our world. And years ago, he would be like, you need to expand these kids when they're younger. You need to get the jaws right. And he wasn't really talking anything about Airway, or at least not much about Airway at the time. He was just saying, get the jaw structure right, because, you're an orthodontist. Well, you're also a dentofacial orthopedist, right? So if you're not getting the face right, who's going to do it? And so, he was teaching that years and years ago. And the practice I joined, that always resonated with me. He was a pretty big pro expansion just for, making room for the teeth and getting the jaws right.
True.
Now, here's, I think, still where some orthodontists struggle is like, well, if I can get the teeth right later, and they're not worried about their jaws, like, why do I need to do anything about their jaws? And that, in my opinion, is where the education piece needs to come together. And so, I mean, even still, I mean, the 2019 AAO white paper, and there was a recent, just a couple months ago, an article published on, where we're at from a scientific research standpoint on all of these things. And, and rightly so, there's still healthy criticism because there's still avenues that need to be explored and researched in a more in-depth way. And the challenge is that everybody looks at this from a slightly different lens. And you have some people, like, everybody talks about, oh, the Airway camp, the Airway orthodontists, the Airway dentists. And that's such a broad, paintbrush. And, like sometimes I like to be included in that paintbrush and other times I don't, because there are
Right.
people saying things that are just, that are just out there. They're not founded in research. They're not, you know what I mean? And they're not presenting information to their patients. And sometimes it's ill-intentioned, although I think that that's probably the less percentage of people. I think sometimes it is just a lack of really comprehensive education of the knowledge and research that's available. And so they might go to one course and have one practitioner that says, hey, you're gonna cure sleep apnea on all the kids. All you have to do is expand them at this age. And it's just like, no. And I get that a lot with skeletal expansions. Patients will come into my office and they'll say, hey, I want to get expanded. I want my jaws expanded. I'm like, okay, why? It's like, well, I have sleep apnea and I want to cure it. I was like, okay, well, have you had a sleep study? No. I was like, well, how do you know you have sleep apnea? So I'm like, I'm talking more people out of treatment immediately. I'm saying, well, let's get some more information. Let's figure out what's really going on here before you commit yourself to, a pretty, invasive type, procedure that may, has complications. All of our procedures do. And so it's like, let's figure out the diagnosis first. And Tracey, you're always saying that, like, diagnose first. And that's why I love, your guys' platform. It teaches practitioners to start with the most important thing, which is the correct diagnosis. After you have the correct diagnosis, you can work into any tool you want to help them find. And some of those tools you'll provide as, a dental or orthodontic practitioner, and other tools are going to be provided by those people on your team that you work with, the ENTs, the sleep physicians, the allergists. And unless you have, a knowledge of what they can do and what they can't do, you'll get frustrated really quick trying to help these patients.
Isn't that the truth? Like, man, when I got started in all this with my kiddos years ago, I I felt like the whole onus was on me. Like I had to fix everything. And, if there were residual symptoms left, I'm like, what did I do wrong? Why are they still tired? Why are they still mouth breathing? I'm like, dang, I got humbled real quick. When you're in the arena, you get your butt kicked.
For
And you
sure.
have to realize that, good grief, it takes a whole team, like you just mentioned. By the way, how did you and Tracy even meet? Because I know you guys were working together, or how did that whole thing happen? Speaking of collaboration, like
Yeah.
how did you two meet?
So
Yeah.
I had, do
Go
you
ahead.
want
Yeah.
me to say?
No, go ahead,
Yes.
Tracy. Yeah.
So it's funny. So I was speaking at the Koi Symposium, and one of the attendees went up to me and was like, Tracy, I want you to look at my son. And so then I know Paul Vernon, and he's in Vegas. This patient was in Vegas. And I was like, okay. And he was like, Tracy, I want you to treat him. I said, yes, but you're in Vegas. So I called Paul. I said, I need a really good orthodontist, that's kind of open to treating this child. And then so Paul sent me Jeremy. And so I told Jeremy, I said, okay, this is the case. I don't know how open you are, but I really need an interdisciplinary team. I think that we have tonsils and adenoids, blah, blah. Can you manage this case? And Jeremy already has like a whole network. So I told the patient, I was like, why don't you hook up with Jeremy and we kind of go from there. Um, and that's how it all started. I mean, really, the key is, like you said, about finding these teams. Um, I think the challenge, what I'm finding, is that we're dealing with growth and development, and we have to be okay with symptoms coming back. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
like, if we think about tonsils and adenoids, the long-term success rate is like less than 25%, but yet it is still the first line of therapy. And when it's not successful past the age of 8. So, and I think that I feel like dentists, like you said, dentists, we're just so hard on ourselves for it to be what we do has to last forever. And I would imagine, Jeremy, as an orthodontist, you're like, it has to last for like your retention protocol,
Right.
but it's we have to give ourselves grace. And I mean, I have a child right now, actually, the one child that was one of my like big woo-woos, like he had OSA as a child. We took tonsils and adenoids, still had OSA. We did expansion and protraction, brought him forward, did a DICE, went off the CPAP at the age of 9. And so he was smooth sailing and we were all confident and happy. Well, he just hit puberty at 11, have some weight gain, and now he's back on CPAP, but we can't do anything else. We've given him the best anatomy that we can, but and I think that that's a discussion that we have to have with our entire team.
Well,
Like Jeremy, would you say, like, do you feel like you were saying that you're talking people out of it? It's like, I mean, yes, there's an anatomy component, but there's a time when then there's not.
Yeah. And yeah, some people I literally do. I mean, they're coming. I had a dentist actually come to me, and prior MMA, and he had actually already had a dice, and he had like epiglottal collapse, and like there was his jaw size was normal. His upper jaw is about 5 millimeters wider than his lower jaw. I
Yeah.
mean, he wanted me to do a MARPE on it, and I'm just like, I don't think it's going to help you. Like nothing that you have presented to me tells me that this is going to resolve the symptoms that you want resolved. And so, we didn't end up treating him, and he didn't end up being treated for expansion at least. And he was able to look at some other avenues, which he found some relief working with the sleep physicians here in the town. And
Yeah.
so things like that, I'll ask patients that question. If they come to me and they're like, hey, I want expansion. And I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, so if we did expansion, when the jaw size is small, like, yes, it's going to make your smile broader for sure. Typically, I mean, over 90% of the time, you're going to have an easier time breathing through your nose afterwards. But if it didn't cure your sleep apnea, would you still want to do it? And if their answer is no, then I'm like, well, you shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like you need
Yeah.
you need to be thinking about this, beforehand. And I think that that's the best way to stay out of trouble in essence as a practitioner is making sure that you're, really doing an informed consent, right? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to say, well, what's going to happen? What can predictably happen based on the most current and available research that we have? And then what might happen? What's my experience? I mean, I'll tell, patients, hey, I had a patient that did this and this is their experience with it. That doesn't mean it's going to be your experience. But either way, from my standpoint, I'm correcting your anatomy, right? And I'm going to let you know what those changes are going to do for sure, and then what they might do. And then you can make the decision, well, is that risk worth it or not? Do I want to go through, expansion or whatever it might be in order to, if I'm getting these things for sure, and maybe we'll get these things, is that worth it to me? I mean, that's a decision that the patient will make, not me. So yeah,
This
I
is
mean, it's a tricky landfield or land, to navigate.
it is. And it's like the wild, wild west. Like you said, the camp is very broad and there's different philosophies. And sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm part of the camp. And then you're like, well, not that camp because I don't know what they're talking about. So, but it's even interesting, like the camp within dentistry, but also within medicine. And I've had some sleep physicians on the podcast and they're just kind of like, we don't understand why within dentistry, because within medicine, they're talking about this stuff. And they're like, it's interesting within dentistry, it's more grassroots. And I said, yes, it is. They're like, but it's not like that in medicine. It's not grassroots. Like we are looking at this and we are talking about this and we are putting this in our journals. One of the people I had on, Dr. Anne Marie Morse of Damn Good Sleep, DAMM, which is her name. I thought it was brilliant. But she was on a podcast with me and she's going to be on an ASAP webinar in 2025. But what she and I actually co-spoke together at Transform Dental Sleep in February. And we were on stage, just had open mic opportunities. It was really just casual conversation, but something they're looking at in medicine. They are looking at this. They're not ignoring us. But, again, they're a little slower waiting for the literature. Whereas, we're in the trenches seeing the changes and we're like, anecdotally, we're seeing it. The research is coming out. So we're doing it because we can't sit by and just watch. But it's looking at the phenotypes and knowing which phenotypes are responsive, that they do see help with obstructive sleep apnea, upper airway resistance syndrome. It's not just apnea. And they recognize that too. It's quality of life, it's upper airway resistance. I mean, even the medical community right now, they're looking at the algorithm, AHI, does it even matter beyond insurance reimbursements? What have we done? What are we missing? But one of the things that's interesting, she's a pediatric sleep and neuro, as they're looking at a lot of gut health, and they're noticing changes in desaturations with changing the gut biome. If you add this bug in, you get more desaturations. If you take this bug out, you get, I mean, it's insane what is happening, what is occurring. So like Tracey said, do the dentistry, do the orthodontics, do the orthopedics, make room for that tongue, make room for that teeth, give them the best future TMJ health. You do have side effects that help them in the now. Like Trace, you got that kid off CPAP during
Yes.
an amazing neurocognitive development time in their life, right? So it's
So that's
like,
important that we say that, because I think that there's our, as dentists, we think about like relapse of the dentition, and I always say, like, at ASAP, our goals are very different. Our goals are to keep the airway patent. Like, if we think about our medical colleagues, they don't think twice about doing CPAP. They don't, and they don't think twice about it because it does make the child sleep better and more. It's proven for brain health and neurocognitive. Now, I do feel, and Jeremy, like, I don't know how you feel about this. I do think that any child that is being recommended CPAP should have an orthodontic evaluation. I mean, I think that
100%.
that is one thing that I don't see stressed enough in the medical community, because we really I mean, while the literature is very tiptoeing on the risks for craniofacial deformities from CPAP, we see it. I mean, it's
mhm.
retractive on a growing child. Jeremy, would you?
And sometimes disfiguring, sometimes even disfiguring. I mean,
Yes.
patients come in on long-term CPAP use. They started on a CPAP when they were 4. And I hesitate even saying this because I don't want a parent to be out there thinking like, oh, I can't put my kid on CPAP because I'm going to
Right,
disfigure their face. But at the same time, like, they need both. They need to be growing and they need their jaws to come forward as much as possible. And I think honestly, these cases are very, pretty rare, right? That a child's going to be on a
right,
CPAP from the age of 4 to 7 or 8 or 9. But I mean, it's sitting right on the midface where we know the growth centers are. And, the worst I've seen, I mean, literally this child, they almost looked Down syndrome because of the amount of maxillary recession and just not even maxillary, midface deficiency that they had. And at the time, it was 5 years after 5 years after CPAP use is the first time that I saw them. And I think that as we go forward, I mean, these are the, more rare instances where, actual skeletal orthopedic changes, perhaps even with, mini implants or plates or whatever's needed to get them right. And at the same time, being able to allow them to continue to wear their CPAP
Yes.
yeah,
is going to be needed because, your traditional protraction face mask, they're not going to be able to wear that and wear the CPAP. And you want them to keep breathing, you want them to keep sleeping, but at the same time, you want to correct the jaws. So you have to have a solution that the child can wear during the day. And most kids aren't going to wear a protraction face mask to school. And so, we talk about, protraction with, some type of plate or some type of, MARPE or something that can be worn full time, even though they're sleeping, they can be contained within their mouth. And so I think that you're going to see a lot more advancements for the, again, it's a small subset of patients, but it's
right,
important because,
Well,
if that's your child, I mean, that's 100% of the patients. So,
yes.
it's something that needs
100%.
to, yeah.
Yeah.
Even
All of my
Trace,
kids, yeah, all of my kids now on CPAP that I'll have them in an expander with reverse pull
yes.
just to combat the retractiveness. I mean, I'm definitely not
Yes.
saying your child shouldn't be on a CPAP, because I have a lot of kids on it that need it. But definitely again, back to collaborative care. Jeremy, do you discuss that in your the needs for protraction in your online uh, platform?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the reason I called the course MARPE-360 is that I know that there's a lot of docs out there who want to know about MARPE, but that
Yeah.
aren't yet willing to go and take one of the other amazing courses that's out there. And so I wanted this to be a bridge. And so the first 2 sections of the course are not about MARPE at all. It's all about anatomy, jaw size,
Oh,
airway,
that's
and what to
beautiful.
look at and diagnose. It's like you have to start there. And so
Mhm.
it's like, we set it up to where they have to go through those modules before they can get any of the information about the MARPEs, because at the end of the day, if you don't know, the target that you're throwing the dart at, you're going to be really frustrated and you're not going to understand or experience the results that you could. And so that, for me, that's foundational. It's like you have to be able to, one, you have to measure the jaws. You have to be able to see, the AP position. And, we've been doing that on 2D cephs forever, but the 3D positions, the transverse, I mean, we've had transverse cephs forever, but like, no orthodontists really ever took them
Right.
traditionally. And so
Right.
now that you have a cone beam, it's like, well, you need to take this section. You need to look at, the transverse at all these different levels. And you need to see, you need to look at the nasal anatomy. You need to look at, the airway, and the airway analysis on a cone beam, as you know, is not diagnostic. It's not magical, but at the same time, having an understanding of those anatomical landmarks. I mean, if you have a
Mhm.
constriction of, 10 centimeters, at the level of the adenoids, I mean, you can see those constrictions on that imaging. And it's like, well, have you ever talked to an ENT? Well, no. And then working, you can actually take those images and send them to the ENT, and then they don't
Yes.
necessarily have to be scoped. I mean, if they're seeing it on your cone beam and they're doing their own clinical evaluation, I mean, that might save them from having an entire additional procedure that they didn't need just by having that communication between us and the ENTs. So 100% foundational. You have to look at it first. And, when we got a cone beam, you couldn't not look at it, right? You have that volume in front of you, and it's like, well, what am I seeing here? And I think the imaging education, you guys do a lot with that as well, is super important and super foundational. You have to know what you're looking at in order to be able to know, how to idealize that.
Yes, and to support your why behind your therapy. I mean, you want and that's the other thing with our live courses, we make sure that it's taught at the standard of care and how to navigate that. And you need to make sure do you have an analysis, a self analysis that supports why you're using protraction, et cetera. But man, I hope we have some sleep physicians listening that would consider, maybe next week I start making some phone calls in town to some orthodontists or general dentists that I know that are airway minded that might connect me with someone doing orthodontics. That if you're putting a child on CPAP, we all know, I mean, even when I see from the sleep physician, when they're putting a child on CPAP, it literally will say one of the side effects is disfigurement, deformity of the face. It is necessary. We want the child breathing, okay? Child has to have a patent airway. The brain needs oxygen. But how can we then support that child on CPAP, like Tracey said, to combat the retractive forces, like even just having them in protraction while on CPAP and doing some transverse or doing other things. And I mean, Tracey, you have them a lot of the times the sleep physicians put them on auto PAP with the protraction so that you can see the pressures coming down as you're sometimes doing the protraction and the expansion. And then you can see some of those pressures auto titrating down, which is nice. But like even just combating that retractive face mask, to me, that should be a standard. If we know that it's causing deformities, what can we do orthopedically to support that child through that CPAP therapy, just to get them through that phase in their life? I think that's so important to have that conversation with our sleep physicians, like we all can agree to that.
Yeah.
We're not saying we're curing anything, but we definitely can. CPAP can make it worse down the road if we don't combat or reverse those mid-face changes from the nasal CPAP, especially. I mean, I've been treating adults for 20 years, and it's causing deformities in adults. So we've got these growing kids that definitely need help. We need to collaborate and put things together. We're just so appreciative.
Jeremy, would you say you're a curse? Because I think it's amazing. I mean, gosh, when we were earlier on our journey, your course is not available to me. I mean, I had to fly and hear everybody, and then there was no mentorship guidance for me. It was just kind of like, all right. It's funny because like the only reason why I took a MARPE course with Woon and Mariana is because my orthodontist told me you can't do it. And so of course you tell me you can't do it. I'm like,
Like,
oh,
what
I'm
do
going
you
to
mean?
do
I
it.
see.
But it was funny because like when I did it, I was like, oh, wow, I opened it. I was like, okay, now can you do the ortho? But
Exactly.
but it's amazing. Would you say like your course is a great course for any GPs that want to like, I love that you have the foundations of it because most GPs don't have the foundations of orthodontics. And do you think that would help us communicate better with our orthodontists? I mean, it sounds like a great course for like a GP and the orthodontist to do it together, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it depends on what you want to get out of it. And so, that's one of the challenges because I've become acquainted with many of the GPs who are practicing in areas where there are no orthodontists who know anything about this or who have any interest in learning anything about this. And so to your point, Stacy, it's like when you jump in, the orthodontic world as a GP and you jump into MARPE specifically, you're jumping into the most difficult cases that we treat as orthodontists. And so it's really, really difficult. My course was not set up to teach the orthodontic side of it at all. I mean, there's orthodontic theory and we go through cases together and we talk about mechanics and things like that. But, it's with the assumption that, the audience already knows the mechanics as it relates to the orthodontic side of it. with, the course in general can be taken by anybody who wants to learn more about sleep disorder breathing and or the anatomical changes that can happen. But as if you're coming into it as a GP that doesn't know much about orthodontics in general, and you're like, oh, I'm going to take this course and learn how to do MARPE and the orthodontics afterwards, like no way, possible. I mean,
Yeah.
so much,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really we tell people, why don't you crawl before you walk, before you run? And
Oh, 100%.
and you need to, because sometimes we'll get people like, I want to start doing this. And like, have you expanded even like a 7-year-old yet? Like maybe we start with, something where or even myofunctional devices in young, 3, 4, 5-year-olds where, that's so influential at that age. Myofunctional therapy can make a huge impact at that age. But um, your course, when I looked at it, I was like, holy cow, well done. Very
Mhm.
well done. Um,
Thank
and
you.
I know, like I said, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I have a lot of respect for what you've put together because we know how hard it is. There's 3 of us, and what we put together it's exhausting, and it's definitely a passion. You have to be passionate about this to put this much work into it. So I know you care about your patients, you care about your colleagues, you care about your community, or you wouldn't have worked so hard to put something so top notch together to make sure it was done right. And we just have a lot of respect for what you've done. And we thank you for jumping on today with us because we know you're a busy guy, especially with 4 kids. And so I wanted to ask my final get to know you question. So
I know, and just so the audience knows, like I tried to get Stacy to tell me what these questions were going to be beforehand, and she was so like tight-lipped about it. I'm like, okay,
it's not happening.
Right.
I want to surprise you. I like the element of surprise at the end. Okay.
She does.
What was the last song that you looked up?
The last, so I have kids. I'm going to qualify it with that. But do you know who Benson Boone is?
No.
Okay, well, he's kind of like this teen sensation guy. So you've probably heard his songs. So that's the last artist I looked up. My daughter, my 12-year-old daughter, like every night she wants to look up like his newest shorts on YouTube and whatnot. So, Beautiful Things is the name of the song. It's actually a really good song. He's an amazing
Beautiful
artist, with a
Things.
great voice, but I would have never known about him, had I not had a 12-year-old daughter. So,
Well, now I got to look it up and I have to talk to my kids about it. Benson Boone, Beautiful
yep,
Things. Okay,
that's it.
cool. How many siblings do you have?
Okay, so I grew up one of 4 boys, and then my mom later remarried and had 3 more kids. So I'm one of 7. So
So
I'm the second in the pecking order. Yep.
that's where I was going to ask. What's the pecking order? What's the birth order? So you're second oldest in 7 kids,
That's correct.
which makes sense. I'm big into birth order. I think there's something very interesting. Once in a while, someone will throw me with their birth order. Like I can predict you were the oldest, or like you're the youngest, or you're in the middle, you're like the peacemaker, but you definitely have more of an oldest vibe, very
So
analytical.
it's funny you say that. And again, this was years ago. So I don't want, my older brother passed away when I was 16. And so like I've kind
Oh,
of been the oldest since then. So it's different. So I grew up as like the second child, and then, then I became the oldest after that. So it's definitely, whenever I talk to people who are big into birth order, like they're always like, oh, that makes so much sense now. You know what I mean? Because
it
I have
does.
kind of traits from both, really.
You do. Yeah, that is an interesting perspective on that. And golly, 7 kids. I have a lot in our family too. So that's a interesting holiday combination for sure. Um, what do you wish more people knew about you?
Oh, that's a really hard question. Um, yeah. Okay. Well, I guess so. A couple years ago, we started this YouTube channel about, and it had nothing to do with orthodontics. It's more about like inspiring kids to give back and make a difference in the world. So I wish people knew about that, and not because it's about me in particular, because it's not, but just about, hopefully it inspires somebody out there in order to like be able to find their own passion. I mean, like one of the things I love doing is helping kids to think about what their future looks like. And we have that opportunity in orthodontics. So the channel is called The Cookie Jar. And it's just, it's basically just taking kids' ideas like, hey, let's go give some filet mignons to the police station. I'm like, okay, like let's go do it. You know what I mean? So just things like that, getting them to think outside of the box, outside of themselves. So I guess if there's one thing that I wanted to promote about anything that I've had, any part in, I would say it's probably that.
That's so cool. That is an awesome thing. I looked at your bio. There's so many interesting things about you. I'm just going to throw some things out just because I didn't get to it in the bio, but this is so cool. Things about Dr. J. He used to own and operate a vacuum and sewing machine sales and repair business. What? He helped his 16-year-old daughter start a Turo car sharing business, which ended up being a disaster.
Total disaster.
And he also went alligator fishing with swamp people, which is that episode available for anyone to when was that?
It wasn't an episode, but it was with the people on the show. So basically, when I was living in New Orleans, they run an alligator farm up there, and so I was at the alligator farm just touring and whatnot. And I'm like, hey, they're like, do these guys still go out and stuff? Like, what's the deal? And they're like, yeah, come back at this time, and then just like ask for this person. I'm like, okay, so I did, and sure enough, I was able to go out with them, and it was a lot of fun. It was.
Did you get an alligator?
Yeah, so that as a guest of their fishing, they call it fishing trip. You're not able to actually harvest the game. They do that part of it, but you can help them load them on and help them process them afterwards and whatnot. So yeah, it was just kind of like a day in the life of an alligator fisherman.
Oh my gosh, who has the harder day, an orthodontist or an alligator fisherman?
Oh, I guess it depends on what you love, but it wouldn't be my cup of tea 365 days a year, that's for sure.
Oh
Especially
my gosh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Well, everybody, thanks for being here, Jeremy. We so appreciate you and have so much respect for what you've done, and we appreciate you as an ASAP member. We're super proud of just all the different things that our members do in the community. It's quite impressive what you've done, what you've built, and we'll put all the contacts and how people can reach out, learn more from you, and all the links where they can follow you and build their own communities and teams in their towns and move this movement forward. Yeah.
I think
sure. Well, thank you. It's been such an honor to be here. Appreciate you both.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.